The year is 1944. The air over Europe is thick, not just with the smoke of battle, but with the palpable tension of strategic calculation. The Allies have landed in Normandy, and the relentless machinery of liberation grinds eastward. Yet war is not just tanks and artillery. It is a sprawling, vulnerable enterprise built on logistics, supply lines, and, most crucially, operational security. The location is a requisitioned farmhouse in a quiet corner of rural France, miles behind the advancing front. To the casual eye, it is just another temporary American staging post, housing a company of engineers and a small detachment of quartermasters, the cogs in the logistical machine. The building, solid stone and slate, offers a deceptive tranquility. But this house is not a simple supply depot. It is a forward command nexus, a temporary brain center managing the deployment of over 30,000 troops and the allocation of critical materiel for the next push. It is, in short, a magnet for espionage, a critical target disguised as an ordinary inconvenience. The highest-ranking officer on site, the man who quietly commands this entire sector, is Colonel Alexander Lex Vance. A strategist of chilling precision, Vance is an enigma even to his own staff. A man who understands that in modern warfare, the most vulnerable point is often the human element. For a commander of his caliber, concealment is paramount. If his identity were known, even within this supposedly secure perimeter, the risk of interception, assassination, or catastrophic intelligence loss would become geometrically higher. Vance has adopted an identity that is both ordinary and essential. He is Captain John Smith, the logistics officer, a man perpetually irritable about inventory and the quality of canned rations. He is the complainer, the man who blends into the background by being boringly bureaucratic. His uniform is intentionally faded, his behavior deliberately unremarkable. This deception is a necessary shield, but one that is fragile, resting entirely on the assumption that no one, absolutely no one, will look too closely at the man barking orders about coffee beans. Enter Geneviève Dubois. Geneviève is a local woman, a survivor of the occupation, now hired by the American forces to manage the kitchen and provide some semblance of home-cooked reality to the diet of powdered eggs and synthetic coffee. Her motivation is simple: survival, and a salary that can support her younger brother. She is neither a spy nor a political activist. She is a pragmatic cook, her focus on the perfect roux and the consistent heating of the mess hall. She arrived 3 weeks ago, observing the base with the clear, unblinking assessment of someone who has lived under occupation. She sees the soldiers, the young, boisterous lieutenants, the weary sergeants, the taciturn Captain Smith. She sees their hunger, their exhaustion, and the subtle, almost undetectable differences in their bearing. The way Captain Smith never jokes, the way his eyes constantly scan the perimeter, the way his fatigue is deeper, more profound, than simple supply chain burnout. The irony, the central tension of this hidden drama, begins here. The supreme commander of a vast military sector is now dependent on the common knowledge and simple daily logistics managed by a local civilian. Geneviève, the cook, is the one person in this base operating under no military pretense, seeing the officers not as ranks, but as men with particular appetites and distinct mannerisms. One evening, the base is plunged into a blackout drill. The only light comes from the red glowing embers of the kitchen stove. Geneviève is slicing potatoes, the sound a steady thwick-thwick against the silence. Captain Smith, Lex Vance, enters the kitchen. He is off duty, exhausted, and for a fleeting moment, his guard is down. He is drawn by the smell of real food, a sensory anchor in a world of strategic abstractions. He doesn't address her with an order, but with a question, stripped of rank. How do you manage to make these potatoes taste like they were grown for this moment? Geneviève glances at him, her face partially obscured by shadow. Her response is quiet, professional, yet contains an undeniable undercurrent of local pride. You forget, Captain. This land has been feeding people long before your armies arrived. We understand its patience. You Americans only understand speed. It is a subtle challenge, a moment where the lines of authority blur. Vance, surprised by the candor and the wisdom behind it, finds himself momentarily stripped of his facade. He is just a man in a borrowed farmhouse, being challenged by a woman about the nature of time and the land. This small, seemingly innocuous interaction is the first hairline crack in Vance's meticulously constructed wall of deception. Genevieve has noted the way his voice dropped its usual bureaucratic harshness, the way he held his posture, not like a frustrated logistics officer, but like a man carrying the weight of continents. The deeper threat is not external, but internal. Genevieve has an ear for dialects, for the subtle shifts in language that betray origin and education. She overhears a fleeting comment from a junior officer, a slip of the tongue. The general's orders are, before he catches himself and nervously corrects. The captain's orders. She files the incident away. General, Captain Smith. The pieces do not fit. Her immediate rational thought is that the junior officer is an idiot, prone to exaggeration. But the subconscious suspicion, the deep-seated survival instinct honed by years of occupation, whispers a more dangerous possibility. Something is profoundly out of place, and this captain is not who he claims to be. The kitchen, her sanctuary, is now the antechamber to a massive military secret. This is the razor's edge upon which the sector's fate now rests. The general's safety depends on the competence of the intelligence services, the loyalty of his staff, and, ironically, the discretion of the woman making his evening soup. If Genevieve is a patriot, she is a silent guardian. If she is an agent, a sleeper asset, a compromised civilian, or simply someone who can be turned, then her culinary skill is merely a Trojan horse, and the entire high command is sitting ducks, oblivious to the fact that the enemy might be tasting their soup before them. The grand strategy of the Western Front is, for the moment, simmering quietly on a French stove. Genevieve Dubois possessed a knowledge far more dangerous than any coded message or stolen blueprint. The intimate, unfiltered observation of men under stress. Her life under the boot of occupation had taught her to categorize uniforms not by rank, but by behavior. Who was desperate, who was arrogant, and crucially, who was acting a part. For 3 years, the German military had used her village as a logistical hub, and she had survived by becoming invisible, by being merely the cook, the cleaner, the provider of simple comforts. Her initial assessment of Captain Smith was clinical. He was too thin, his hands too soft for a man who supposedly dealt with crates and manifests. His boots were always perfectly polished, even after a supposed muddy inspection trip. Logistics officers curse mud, strategists fear time. And Captain Smith feared time, staring at his wristwatch with a profound, almost desperate intensity that bespoke of deadlines measured in divisions, not delivery schedules. This morning, the pressure is higher. A crucial armored push is planned for the sector, and Colonel Vance, the man known as Captain Smith, is holed up in the small, soundproofed room that the Americans call the War Room, though it looks like an ordinary study. The air outside the room crackles with suppressed anxiety. Messengers run, phones ring incessantly, and the sound of a distant, persistent static suggests radio traffic is at its peak. Genevieve is preparing the midday meal, a hearty stew designed to boost morale, a psychological weapon more effective than any pep talk. She stands near the back window, ostensibly peeling carrots, but her eyes are focused on the gravel driveway. She notes the subtle security details, the way the sentries change their patrol patterns every hour on the hour, the new, heavier caliber machine gun installed near the barn, and the black sedan that arrives, unmarked, windows opaque, depositing a single older man in a civilian suit before speeding away. No logistics officer, no matter how essential, warrants a visit from men who move with the cold precision of intelligence assets. She remembers the slip-up, the general's orders. It wasn't just the word general that struck her. It was the immediate, almost physical terror on the young officer's face as he corrected himself. That kind of fear is reserved for the highest authority, the kind of authority that could end careers or lives with a single signature. Genevieve has a secret of her own, one the Americans would never suspect. Her husband, André, was not merely a local farmer who died in an accident during the occupation. He was part of the resistance, running a key radio intercept station out of their attic. André taught Genevieve a dangerous craft, passive signals intelligence. She knows the sound of a secured Allied frequency and the telltale rhythm of a high-speed Morse code burst. Now, the static coming from the war room is exactly that. The rapid, tightly compressed data transmission of a high-level command network. As she moves pots in the kitchen, she overhears a fragment of conversation between two junior staff officers near the pantry. The general is furious about the delay of the P-47 squadron, claims the Germans have moved up their 88s to target the bridges. P-47, 88s, bridges. The terms are fragments of the strategic puzzle, technical components of a massive military operation. A logistics officer would worry about fuel and tires. A general worries about air cover and anti-aircraft defenses against strategic objectives. The pieces click into place with terrifying clarity. Genevieve is now operating on a dual track. She is the diligent cook, stirring the stew, adding bay leaves, discussing the price of eggs with the supply sergeant. Beneath this calm surface, her mind is racing. If she knows, if she has deduced the colonel's true rank, then the knowledge poses a triple-edged threat. 1. To herself. If the Americans discover she knows, she risks being arrested as a spy, regardless of her intentions. Security protocols dictate immediate, harsh isolation. 2. To the general. Her accidental knowledge is a massive security breach. If she is captured, tortured, or simply blackmailed, the entire Allied operation could be compromised. 3. To the operation. If the Germans have assets in the region, and they always do, they might have also observed the subtle anomalies, the unique communications traffic, the sudden presence of intelligence officers. Genevieve's identity, her access, and her proximity to Captain Smith make her a potential vector for catastrophic failure. Vance, meanwhile, is entirely focused on the battle unfolding on his map. He believes his cover is ironclad. He trusts the complex system of checks and layers his own intelligence unit has put in place. The thought that the only unsecured element in his entire security perimeter is the woman who prepares his coffee, a simple local civilian, is an intellectual blind spot. He has planned for every contingency of military espionage, but not for the quiet, pervasive espionage of a survivor's intuition. He leaves the war room, rubbing his temples, the exhaustion finally visible. He heads straight for the kitchen, drawn by the smell of the stew. Genevieve places a bowl in front of him, silently. He looks up at her, really looks at her, for the first time without the lens of rank or deception. Genevieve, he says, using her name. Is this the only true thing left in this goddamn war? The taste of a simple meal? She meets his gaze, holding it steady. Her reply is laced with the irony only a survivor can muster. A simple meal, Captain, is the one thing that cannot be faked. It tells you exactly what went into it. And sometimes, she pauses, wiping her hands on her apron. Sometimes people forget to look at the ingredients. This exchange is the intellectual duel beneath the surface. Vance hears a philosophical musing. Genevieve has just issued a warning, veiled in culinary terms. She is scrutinizing his ingredients, and she knows his recipe is incomplete. The stage is set for a silent, deadly game of cat and mouse, where the stakes are not merely personal, but global. Her next move will be to test his limits, to see how deep the deception runs. The fragile piece of the command nexus is an illusion sustained by routine. Genevieve maintains hers meticulously. She cleans the war room after the long night's operations, a process that is both necessary and a cover for quiet observation. The military men, focused on the massive scale of the invasion, leave behind a trail of strategic crumbs, discarded notepads, chalk dust from the map table, and the lingering scent of tobacco and fear. Today she finds a notepad half burned in the waste bin. It's a habit of Vance's to incinerate sensitive notes, but in his fatigue he missed a page. The charred edges frame 3 distinct sets of numbers, N51, 2, E4, 9. Below it, an alphanumeric code, V557 red. The coordinates are clearly recognizable as a strategic crossroads deep inside German-held territory, far from the current front line. This is not the target of a logistics convoy. It is the target of a deep strike operation. This small piece of paper is a thunderclap of confirmation. The information is so vital, so out of place for a captain, that it removes all doubt. Her initial suspicion solidifies into a dangerous certainty. Captain Smith is managing high-level strategic intelligence. He is a general, or at least a powerful chief of staff, running the show from the rear echelon. Her predicament is now acute. She holds an asset, a piece of intelligence that could save or cost lives, allied or otherwise. She is a civilian, technically neutral, but living on occupied land. What is her duty? To her former resistance connections, to the Allied forces, or simply to survival? She decides on a test, a calculated risk to gauge Vance's awareness of her capabilities. The next morning, over his usual meager breakfast, coffee, one slice of toast, Genevieve approaches him with an air of casual concern. "Captain," she begins, her tone light, almost maternal. "The kitchen staff heard some unsettling news from a delivery driver this morning. He said the bridges near the town of V557 are heavily guarded now. Seems the Germans are expecting trouble there." She watches him, her entire being focused on the micro-expressions that cross his face. Vance's reaction is instantaneous, a controlled but absolute shutdown. His eyes, usually weary, sharpen into pinpricks of icy blue. The toast stops halfway to his mouth. The movement is subtle, yet devastatingly effective. He doesn't ask how she heard the rumor, or what else she knows. He focuses only on neutralizing the information. "Genevieve," he says, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that carries more command authority than any shouted order. "The military police are very clear about rumor-mongering. It is a severe breach of security. The bridges are fine. The delivery driver is an idiot. If you hear this again, you report it to the guard post. Do you understand? Any mention of troop movements, locations, or enemy defenses, even if it is just gossip, is punishable by court-martial. The threat is clear, absolute, and disproportionate to the offense of gossip." A simple logistics captain would be annoyed. A general protecting a deep strike operation would be genuinely alarmed, and his reaction confirms everything. The specific mention of V557 caused a physical tremor of apprehension, instantly masked by professional rage. Genevieve retreats, a quiet victory in her heart. She has confirmed his rank, and more importantly, confirmed that the coordinates are real, and that his mission is active. She also now knows his primary vulnerability. He is terrified of local, uncontrolled intelligence leaking into his operational bubble. But the test has also put a target on her back. Vance, for the first time, registers Genevieve not as a domestic fixture, but as an uncontrolled variable. Later that afternoon, Vance calls his chief of staff, Major Davies, into the war room. "Davies," Vance says, his voice flat, "run a full, discreet background check on the French civilian, Genevieve Dubois. Everything. Political affiliation, family history, occupation history during the German tenure. Pay particular attention to any associations with the Maquis or known collaborators. Do not let the CID or military intelligence know you are running this. This is strictly a command-level security assessment. And Davies," he adds, his eyes hardening, "do it in less than 12 hours. Use the secure channel to Paris. I want to know who is in my kitchen." Vance understands the historical irony. The greatest minds in Europe, the most sophisticated cryptographers, the industrial might of 2 continents, all of it could be undone by a simple, overheard conversation in the scullery. His elaborate fortress of operational security is now facing an existential threat, not from the German High Command, but from the intuitive wisdom of a woman who just proved she knew more about his mission than his entire perimeter guard. The game is no longer passive. It is now a race to uncover the truth before the truth destroys the operation. Colonel Vance's entire career was built on the meticulous analysis of technological superiority, but his current predicament hinges on the oldest weapon, human deception. His life as Captain Smith relied on mimicking the dullness of bureaucracy. This required a profound understanding of the technology he was pretending to handle versus the technology he actually commanded. As a logistics officer, Smith would fret over the M4 Sherman's fuel consumption, a quantifiable, mechanical problem. As a general, Vance was focused on the sophisticated, unquantifiable challenge of German radio direction finding, RDF, and the emerging threat of jet technology. The farmhouse itself was a marvel of disguise technology. The war room was shielded with thick layers of lead paint and copper mesh, a rudimentary but effective Faraday cage to prevent the Germans from picking up high-frequency radio leakage from the base's powerful SCR-299 communication truck hidden in the barn. The phone lines were run through a dedicated, scrambled circuit, rendering even casual phone chatter impenetrable. But the Germans were not static. Their technical genius, though outpaced in production, was terrifyingly precise. German Abwehr, military intelligence units, utilized advanced long-range radio reconnaissance, listening for the unique fingerprint of a major command node's traffic volume. They wouldn't know it was Vance, but they would know something vital was happening in this French sector. Vance's staff utilized a protocol known as the Chameleon, a tactical deception plan. It involved running massive nonsensical radio traffic through the SCR-299s, a continuous white noise flow of fake supply requisitions, troop movements for non-existent units, and random statistical reports. The goal was to bury the genuinely critical, brief-coded bursts beneath a mountain of meaningless data, confusing the German RDF operators. This was the strategic context that Genevieve was inadvertently exposing. Meanwhile, Major Davies' report comes back, delivered via a highly secured one-time pad teletype from Paris. The content is chillingly sparse, yet complex. Geneviève Dubois, age 32. Husband, André Dubois, reported killed in a farming accident 1943. No recorded political affiliations. Clean record. However, André Dubois was not a farmer. He was an electrician who worked for the National Telephone Company and was suspected by the Abwehr of running an illegal radio operation for the Maquis cell known as Orion. He disappeared just days after a sophisticated German RDF sweep located a high-power clandestine transmitter in the vicinity of their farm. Officially, she is clean. Subtly, she is the widow of a suspected communications expert whose death was likely an execution. Vance stares at the report, the irony a bitter taste in his mouth. The German pursuit of radio technology killed her husband. The Allied reliance on it now makes her an accidental but profound security risk. Her husband's knowledge, the skills of an electrician familiar with wiring, antennas and signals, may have been passed on to her. She could be passively reading the environment with an awareness no security briefing could anticipate. Vance calls Genevieve to his private study, a place she normally only cleans. The room is Spartan, dominated by a large operational map, covered by a weighted canvas. Genevieve, Vance begins, his tone less Captain Smith and more General Vance, authoritative, but tinged with a guarded respect. We've had a break-in at a supply depot near here. A very strange one. They stole specific, high-end radio components, nothing common. He pauses, watching her face. I need your help. Your husband was an electrician, correct? Did he ever mention anything about high-frequency coils, crystal diodes, anything technical? Anything that could be used to build a powerful transmitter? Vance is testing her again, not for espionage, but for her knowledge base. He is offering a carefully constructed lie to see if she can deconstruct it. Genevieve, however, is a step ahead. She knows the story is likely fabricated, but she understands the subtext. He knows about André. He knows about the risk. She gives him the perfect answer, a precise, technical observation, wrapped in common sense. André was meticulous, Captain. He always said the real problem with making a radio transmit far was not the coils, but the ground. You need the earth to be your anchor. A simple thief takes the shiny parts. A clever one knows where to put his antenna and how to ground it properly. If your thieves are clever, they already have a good position. The observation is devastatingly astute. It bypasses Vance's lie and focuses on the tactical reality of clandestine radio work. Only someone with intimate knowledge of the Maquis or communications could pivot immediately to the tactical problem of grounding. Vance ends the interrogation quickly, his internal alarm blaring. She is not just a civilian. She is a technologist of the clandestine world. He now has a choice: arrest her or neutralize the risk by bringing her into a limited circle of trust, turning the threat into an asset. But trust is the most expensive commodity in war, and the next 24 hours are critical for the attack on coordinates N51, 2, E4, 9. The dilemma of Genevieve is placed on hold as a genuine immediate threat emerges, a leak in the supply chain. Major Davies bursts into the war room late that night, pale and holding a decoded flash report. "General, sir, the enemy knows about the bridging operation, not the timing, but the location. German planes just strafed the advance party moving into position near the V55B7 crossroads. They knew exactly where to hit. 2 trucks destroyed, 6 casualties." Vance snaps into action. The cover is blown. The technical genius of the chameleon protocol, the secure lines, the Faraday cage, all bypassed. The leak is not technical. It is human. Someone on this base, or someone with access, is transmitting information to the Abwehr. The general's cover, designed to protect him from high-value targeting, has failed to protect his operation from a low-value courier. "Davies, lock down the base. No one leaves. No calls, no radio traffic except the decoy noise. We have a spy, and they're right here." The subsequent interrogation of the entire base is fruitless. Every soldier has an alibi. Every communication log is clean. Yet, the evidence is burning bright. The Germans knew the target. Vance finds himself staring at the operational map, his mind wrestling with the geometry of the leak. How? He goes back to basics, the non-technological vectors of intelligence, food, mail, laundry, and the garbage. The only civilian with unrestricted access to every part of the compound, and to the personal effects of every officer, is Genevieve Dubois. His initial suspicion of her was about her technical knowledge. Now, it shifts to her opportunity. He reviews the list of possible intelligence transfer methods. Microdots, concealed in laundry buttons or personal belongings. Encrypted messages, passed in market deliveries or through the local network. Simple observation, noting troop numbers, vehicle markings, or officer habits. He orders a full, surreptitious search of Genevieve's cottage and all her possessions. The search yields nothing incriminating. No radio parts, no German currency, no coded documents. Only the simple, worn possessions of a French provincial widow. Vance, walking through the command center, sees Genevieve in the mess hall preparing a late-night ration of coffee. She is humming a tune, an old French folk song. He is struck by the image of calm she projects, a serenity that could either be innocence or the most profound self-control. Then, the realization hits him, blindingly simple, yet devastatingly overlooked. It's not the high-tech signal or the microdot. It's the supply chain logistics. He strides over to the supply sergeant, a gruff, honest man named Kowalski. "Sergeant, tell me everything that leaves this base." "Everything." "Sir, just the garbage, the excess slop for the pigs, and the empty shell casings for recycling. Oh, and the ashes from the incinerator. The local farmer pays us a few francs for the ash. Says it's great for the garden, good fertilizer." Vance freezes. The incinerator. The paper from the war room, the half-burned notepad with the coordinates. "Kowalski, who collects the ash? Be specific." "Genevieve, sir. She makes sure the farmer gets it. It's an old agreement with the previous unit." The blood drains from Vance's face. The ash. Genevieve had confirmed his mission by seeing the unburned half-page. But the spy, the actual operational agent, must have been using the incinerated waste for their information transfer. The technical brilliance of the spy lies in its utter simplicity. They were not transmitting data. They were receiving physical evidence. Vance's staff were burning high-level intelligence, but the coordinates, the targets, the strategic moves, all of it could be deduced by a careful inspection of the ashes. The quantity of burnt paper from the war room, the residual chemical traces of maps or special ink, the faint, heat-warped fragments of documents. A simple system of marking, a specific type of stationery that burns a certain color, a specific piece of hardware thrown in, all could constitute a coded message in the debris. The enemy agent, the true fifth column, was not the cook, but the farmer who received the fertilizer. And Genevieve, by simply managing the exchange, was either the unwitting courier or the most brilliant operational asset the Germans possessed. Vance now has a name, the farmer. But who is he? And how is Genevieve involved? The general realizes his gravest mistake. He assumed the enemy would use their technology. Instead, they weaponized the one thing the Americans discarded as useless, the waste of the command. Vance, now operating under extreme urgency, devises a trap. He can no longer wait for the traditional slow crawl of military intelligence. The attack on the bridge at V557 is critical and must proceed, but he must also neutralize the leak before it compromises the entire regional strategy. He summons Major Davies and 2 men from his personal security detail, trusted professionals who understand the term plausible deniability. "We are running a new deception play, Davies. It's called Operation Cinder. We're going to feed the farmer a lie, a precise, calculated strategic misdirection," Vance instructs. The plan is simple. 1. Fabricate evidence. They create a new set of highly convincing, handwritten documents detailing a false operation. This phantom attack targets a secondary objective, a railway junction 50 kilometers south of the real V557 bridge. The documents are written on the same unique, watermarked paper used in the war room. 2. Incineration. The false documents, after being reviewed and approved, with great show in the war room, are intentionally and partially burned, leaving just enough trace evidence of the false target and the corresponding fictitious unit movements. 3. The drop. Genevieve, as part of her routine, will be tasked with depositing the ashes the next morning. Vance ensures he is present, making a point of being brusque and dismissive. "Make sure this worthless debris is cleared out quickly, Genevieve. We have no time for clutter." Vance watches her face as she pushes the heavy wheelbarrow containing the ash bin. She is professional, but he catches a flicker of something in her eyes, an awareness, a slight widening that suggests she knows the contents of that bin are anything but worthless. The climax of the trap occurs at dawn. Vance and his 2 security men, disguised in civilian clothes, hide in a dense hedgerow overlooking the small, isolated dirt road where Genevieve usually meets the farmer. The farmer arrives precisely at 06:15. His name is Jean. He is an older man, seemingly harmless, driving a decrepit cart pulled by a slow-moving donkey. Jean and Genevieve exchange only a few words, comments about the weather, the war, the lack of quality flour. Genevieve then helps him load the ash bin onto the cart. What happens next confirms Vance's grim hypothesis. Before Jean drives off, he pulls a small, empty brown paper bag out of his pocket. He subtly gestures to Genevieve. She reaches into a hidden pocket of her apron and produces a small, heavy shard of ceramic. It's the base of a broken coffee mug, one that had been chipped and discarded from the officers' mess a week prior. Jean takes the shard, wraps it quickly in the paper bag, and places it inside the cart. The exchange is fast, wordless, and executed with the chilling precision of long practice. The shattered ceramic is the key. It's not a message from Genevieve, but a confirmation to the spy. The ceramic shard, a piece of something everyone sees and ignores, is the signal. It means the high-value burn is done. The material is in the ash. Proceed. Genevieve is not the spy. She is the dead drop manager, the trusted local asset running the physical intelligence transfer. The immediate question is she coerced? Or is she a loyal German agent? As Jean begins to pull away, Vance gives the silent signal. The 2 security men intercept the cart, fast and brutal. Jean offers no resistance. He is a professional. Vance confronts Genevieve, who is staring in shock, the wheelbarrow still rattling behind her. "The farmer has the ashes, Genevieve," Vance says, his voice now devoid of any pretense of rank. "And you gave him the signal. Where does the information go from the farm? Who is the ultimate recipient?" Genevieve does not deny the exchange. She looks at him, her eyes burning with an emotion he can't categorize. Not fear, but a cold, deep hatred. "You speak of lies and truth, General," she spits out, finally addressing him by his true rank. "You asked me for my husband's knowledge. He died for his knowledge. This farmer, Jean, he is the one who took my husband. He is the collaborator. I do not work for the Germans. I work for him." The revelation is a stunning, agonizing twist of human reality. Genevieve is being blackmailed. Jean, the spy, controls her. Her forced cooperation is not ideological, it is existential. She is a double agent against her will, the courier for the man who murdered her husband. The signal, the ceramic shard, was her proof of compliance, ensuring her brother's safety, a secret Jean held over her. The technological puzzle is solved. The enemy weaponized the disposal of physical information, but the human element is infinitely more complex and tragic. Vance has caught his spy, but in doing so, he has exposed the raw, brutal extortion of a local woman, a moral and operational disaster. With Jean, the collaborator, in custody, the immediate threat is contained. Interrogation reveals that Jean, a long-time German sympathizer, used a simple optical scanner to analyze the burnt, watermarked paper fragments in the ash bin, assembling a daily strategic puzzle for the Abwehr via a short-range transmitter hidden in his donkey cart. The information he received from Genevieve was a daily confirmation that the mail was delivered. Crucially, the trap has worked. The Abwehr now believes the main Allied thrust is 50 kilometers south, targeting the fictitious railway junction. This is the strategic turning point of the documentary's central thesis. The deception, fueled by the general's disguise and inadvertently aided by the unwilling civilian, has achieved a critical tactical victory. Vance now has to make a calculated gamble. The original attack on the V557 bridge is still on schedule, but the Germans, acting on Jean's final fraudulent intelligence drop, will divert resources south. Vance must exploit this window of opportunity, but he must also deal with the human cost, Genevieve. He faces her in the war room, which is now buzzing with the final preparations for the actual attack. The sound of distant artillery is audible, the war moving closer. The farmer is neutralized, Genevieve, Vance states simply. We recovered his transmission equipment. Your cooperation with him is over. You are free of his blackmail. Genevieve remains stony. Free, General. I live on a land that you will soon leave. You solved a problem of war. I solved a problem of survival. The two are not the same. Vance understands. He can't simply release her. She knows his identity, the base location, and the nature of the false intelligence he fed the enemy. She is the ultimate security risk, yet his conscience, and the sheer injustice of her situation, prevents him from following the protocol of harsh confinement. I offer you a contract, Genevieve, he says. We need people who understand how information moves outside the military bubble. We need people who can see the world not as a map, but as a village. We need your intuition. He lays out a proposition. She will be evacuated immediately to the Allied-controlled sector near Paris. She will be given a new identity, a secure residence, and a pension. Her brother will be placed in a protected school. In return, she signs a document, binding her to absolute silence regarding everything she has seen, heard, and deduced at this command post, for life. This is not about loyalty. It is about paying a fair price for an intelligence asset, her discretion, and for the strategic advantage her unwilling role provided. Genevieve studies the general. She sees a man who started the war believing in the technical solution, tanks, planes, encryption, but who is ending this phase of it realizing the absolute power of the human element, of vulnerability, and of deception. She signs the document. Her arc of transformation is complete, from a simple cook, overlooked and underestimated, to a critical strategic element whose forced silence is worth more than a division of troops. The final scene of the chapter is the attack itself. At 03:00 hours, Allied forces, utilizing the P-47 Thunderbolt squadrons Vance had secured, launch a devastatingly successful coordinated strike on the V557 bridge. The German defenses are thin, unprepared, and focused on the decoy 50 kilometers south. The bridge is captured largely intact, allowing the armored division to stream across, punching a critical hole in the German line. Vance stands over the map, the lines of battle finally moving in his favor. He turns to Davies. The deception worked. The price was high, but the line held. He then looks at the empty spot where Genevieve's coffee pot usually sat. We will clear this place and move out before sunrise. And Davies, he concludes, his voice low, I want a new standing order across this sector. Every piece of paper, every map, every strategic item, no matter how small, is to be reduced to ash so fine it could pass through a kitchen sieve. And absolutely no local civilians are to handle our waste. Never again will a general's command be threatened by a handful of fertilizer. The strategic battle is won through technological power and strategic planning, but the operational security battle was won through a moral compromise and the simple, terrifying reality that war's greatest weakness is always found in the everyday details. The command nexus is dismantled within hours. The farmhouse is returned to its ordinary, silent existence, leaving behind only the ghosts of high-level strategy and the lingering scent of stale coffee and fear. Colonel Vance, identity restored to general, moves on to command the next phase of the war, forever changed by the experience of his disguised command. The impact of this deception was immense. The success at the V557 bridge, secured under minimal resistance thanks to the German diversion, allowed the Third Army to accelerate its advance by an estimated 2 weeks, a massive strategic gain that saved countless lives and shortened the overall campaign. The cost of a lie, in this case, yielded the profit of military acceleration. The story of the general disguised as Captain Smith became a whispered legend among the highest echelons of Allied intelligence, a case study in the perils and power of deep cover command. It illustrated a fundamental principle of modern warfare. The intelligence battle is often won not by the most complex technology, but by the most effective infiltration of the banal. The greatest code to break was not enigma, but the routine of the kitchen. Years later, General Vance retired, a decorated but profoundly private man. He understood that his greatest moment of strategic vulnerability came not from a hostile fighter plane or a spy satellite, a technology still science fiction, but from the intuitive eyes of a cook. Geneviève Dubois lived out her years quietly, her past a perfectly guarded secret. She never spoke of the war, her husband, or the time she served coffee to a general. She became one of the countless unsung civilians who, through forced circumstance, accidental knowledge, or sheer survival instinct, tipped the balance of the conflict. Her silence became her most valuable contribution to the Allied victory. The psychological legacy of the episode was this: the Second World War was the first true war of the industrial age, defined by the power of the assembly line and the complexity of the machine. Yet this story, like so many others buried in the archives, proves that the ultimate weakness of any technological command system is the human interface. The man who planned the largest armored pushes was most exposed when he was just a man looking for a meal. The intelligence failure was not a system crash, but a half-burned piece of paper. The true hero of this narrative is the enduring, tragic complexity of human motivation. The spy wasn't a fanatic, but a blackmailer. The security risk wasn't an enemy agent, but a grieving widow. And the strategic advantage was gained not by superior firepower, but by exploiting the fear that saved a brother's life. The dust settles. The technology advances. But the lesson of the kitchen general remains a cold, hard truth. To win a war of technology, you must never forget the vulnerable, essential, and unpredictable nature of the human heart. If the intricate dance of deception and high-stakes strategy fascinates you, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. In our next documentary, we explore how a single, flawed radar unit in 1940 changed the entire course of the Battle of Britain. Join us as we continue to unlock the hidden history of technology and human endurance.